On your knees, hands behind your head. Officer, I'm a surgeon. Do it. Did I say talk? Get down, now. The black man in surgical scrubs lowered himself to the cold asphalt. Gravel bit into his kneecaps. His hands locked behind his skull. Chief Harlan Voss leaned in close. Look at you, playing dress-up in scrubs. He flicked the hospital lanyard hanging from the man's neck. He turned to his officer and grinned. Book him. I've been cleaning trash off these streets for years. One more won't hurt. The man on his knees said nothing, just breathed, slow, steady. But what Chief Voss doesn't know, what no one on that street knows yet, is going to destroy his entire career. Yeah, he really thought he was in control. Let's see what happens next. The world looked completely different for Dr. Darius Caldwell earlier that day. The fluorescent lights of Operating Room 3 buzzed faintly overhead. Darius stood at the surgical table, gloved hands steady, eyes locked on the exposed chest cavity in front of him. A teenage boy, car wreck on the interstate, shattered ribs, a punctured lung filling with blood. The monitors beeped in a rhythm only surgeons understand. Fast, too fast. Suction, Darius said, calm, like he was ordering coffee. The nurse cleared the blood. Darius's fingers moved with the kind of precision that takes decades to build. Stitch by stitch, vessel by vessel, the beeping slowed, the lung inflated, the boy's chest rose on its own. He's stable, Darius said, pulling off his gloves. Let's close him up. That was the second life he saved that day. The first was an elderly man whose aorta had ruptured earlier that morning. Most surgeons wouldn't even attempt that procedure. Darius did it before breakfast. This is who Darius Caldwell is. Chief of Surgery at St. Ellington Memorial Hospital. Decades of experience. Over 4,000 operations. A reputation so spotless that Mr. Clayton Whitaker III, the hospital's billionaire board chairman, personally flew to Chicago years ago just to recruit him. But outside those hospital walls, none of that seems to matter. Willowbrook County is the kind of place that looks perfect from the road. Oak-lined streets, freshly painted fences, lawns trimmed so clean they look fake. Median household income sits around a high figure, the kind of town where people wave at each other from their porches and call it community. But look a little closer. The neighborhood watch signs are on every corner, not because of crime, because of who might wander in. The population is overwhelmingly white. The remaining small percentage know exactly what that feels like. Darius is part of that small percentage. In the time he's lived here, he's been followed through the hardware store multiple times. A cashier once asked to see a second form of ID when he paid with a credit card. His neighbor across the street has never once said hello. He doesn't talk about it much, doesn't post about it, doesn't complain. He just goes to work, saves lives, and drives home. And that drive home is where everything falls apart. It was evening. The sky had turned that deep amber color right before it goes dark. Leaves scattered across Oakwood Road like confetti after a parade nobody attended. Darius pulled out of the hospital parking lot in his dark blue Chevy Tahoe. Not flashy, not new. He could afford any car on the lot, but he chose this one because it doesn't draw attention. A deliberate choice. A survival strategy he learned from his father decades ago. Inside the car, a classical station played low on the radio. A medical journal sat on the passenger seat. His hospital lanyard swung gently from the rearview mirror. On the dashboard, his phone buzzed with a text from his teenage daughter. "Dad, don't forget the food, please." He smiled, tapped the voice reply. "On my way, sweetheart. 20 minutes. The speed limit on Oakwood Road is 35. Darius was doing 33. He always drives under the limit in Willowbrook. Another thing his father taught him, never give them a reason, not even a small one. But here's what Darius didn't know. Chief Harlan Voss had been running the Willowbrook Police Department for years. He answered to no one. The town council rubber-stamped his budget every year without reading it. He played golf with the mayor on Saturdays. He drank bourbon with the county judge on Sundays. His word was law, literally. In recent years, multiple excessive force complaints had been filed against his department. Every single one involved a person of color. Every single one was dismissed internally by Voss himself. And that evening, Voss was parked in his cruiser on the shoulder of Oakwood Road, engine idling, window down. He watched the dark blue Tahoe approach through the amber light. He saw the driver. He picked up his radio. "Dawson, I got one. Oakwood heading south. Run the plates if you want, but I already know. Pull him over." The blue lights flashed on behind Darius Caldwell's car like a verdict that had already been decided. Darius saw the lights in his rearview mirror and felt his stomach tighten, not because he'd done anything wrong, because he already knew how this would go. He pulled over immediately, turned off the engine, turned off the radio, placed both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, fingers spread wide so they could be seen clearly. This wasn't his first time. His father's voice echoed somewhere in the back of his skull, the same words he'd heard since he was a teenager. Both hands are visible. No sudden moves. Yes, sir. No, sir. Stay alive first. Be angry later. Gravel crunched behind him. Footsteps slow and deliberate. A flashlight beam hit his side mirror and bounced into his eyes. Officer Bryce Dalton appeared at the window. Young, jaw clenched, one hand resting on his holster like he was expecting a war. License and registration. Of course, officer. Darius kept his voice low, controlled. My wallet is in my back left pocket. I'm going to reach for it slowly. Did I ask for a speech? Just hand it over. Darius reached, slowly. Every movement is calculated. He pulled out his wallet and extended it through the window. Dalton snatched it, flipped it open, glanced at the license, then looked back at Darius, then at the car, then back at Darius. This is your vehicle? Yes, sir. Are you sure about that? I'm sure. Dalton aimed the flashlight directly into Darius's face, held it there. The light was blinding. Darius didn't flinch, didn't blink, just sat there, hands still on the wheel. Step out of the vehicle. May I ask why I've been stopped? You may not. Step out now. Darius exhaled through his nose, unbuckled his seatbelt, opened the door slowly, stepped out onto the gravel shoulder with his hands slightly raised. The evening air was cool, the kind of chill that bites through thin fabric. His surgical scrubs offered nothing against it. Goosebumps crawled up his forearms. Dalton grabbed his shoulder and spun him toward the car, hands on the hood. Darius placed his palms flat on the cold metal. The engine heat had already faded. The surface was almost icy. That's when the second cruiser pulled up. The headlights washed over the scene. A black man in scrubs, palms down on the hood of his own car. An officer standing behind him with a flashlight. From a distance, it looked exactly like what it was. Chief Harlan Voss stepped out of the cruiser. He didn't rush. He adjusted his belt, straightened his collar, walked over like a man inspecting his property. He looked at Darius the way you'd look at a stain on a clean floor. Well, what do we have here? It wasn't a question. Chief, I pulled him over on Oakwood heading south, Dalton reported. He's being cooperative, but something feels off. Something always feels off with these ones. Voss circled Darius slowly. His boots ground the gravel. Each step is deliberate. Nice car for a guy in pajamas. These are surgical scrubs, sir. Darius's voice remained flat. I'm Dr. Darius Caldwell. I'm chief of surgery at St. Ellington Memorial. My hospital ID is around my neck. Voss stopped, looked at the lanyard. Read it, then laughed. Chief of surgery. He said it the way you'd say a child's imaginary job title. Right, and I'm the Pope. He unclipped the lanyard from Darius's neck and tossed it onto the roof of the car like it was garbage. You know what I think? I think you found these scrubs somewhere. Maybe a dumpster. Maybe a laundromat. I think this car doesn't belong to you, and I think you've got about 10 seconds to give me a reason not to search every inch of it. You need my consent or a warrant to search my vehicle. Silence. Voss stepped closer, close enough that Darius could feel the heat of his breath on the back of his neck. Son, I am the warrant. He snapped his fingers at Dalton. Open it up. Dalton moved to the passenger side, opened the door, started pulling things out. The medical journal, a stethoscope case, a bag of surgical instruments wrapped in sterile cloth, a protein bar, a water bottle. Dalton held up the surgical instrument bag. Chief, what's this? Voss walked over, unzipped it, looked at the scalpels, forceps, hemostats, tools that Darius uses to save lives every single day. Looks like burglary tools to me. Voss smiled. Bag it. Darius closed his eyes. His fingers pressed harder against the hood. The cold metal numbed his palms. Those are surgical instruments. They're hospital property. There's an inventory sticker on the inside of the bag with my name on it. Voss didn't check, didn't even glance. You know what your problem is? Voss said, walking back to Darius. You think talking like that makes you sound smart. It doesn't. It makes you sound guilty. A third cruiser arrived. Officer Kayla Brooks. She parked behind Voss's vehicle and stepped out quietly. Her body cam was active. The small red light blinked steadily on her chest. She took in the scene. A man in scrubs, hands on the hood, two officers hovering. No visible threat. Her expression shifted into something uncomfortable, but she said nothing. She stood near her cruiser and watched. By now, the neighborhood had started to notice. A white couple appeared on their porch 2 houses down. The woman had a glass of wine. The man had his arms crossed. They watched like it was television. Across the street, a college-aged kid raised his phone and started recording. The phone's tiny lens captured everything. The flashing lights, the officers, the man in scrubs who hadn't raised his voice once. Darius's phone buzzed in his pocket. Then again. Then a third time. Each vibration felt like a small heartbeat against his thigh. The hospital was calling. He couldn't reach it. Couldn't move. Voss noticed the buzzing. Popular guy. Probably your dealer is wondering where you are. That's my hospital. Sure it is. Voss nodded at Dalton. The younger officer pulled out handcuffs. Turn around. On what charge? Resisting a lawful order, possession of suspicious instruments, failure to comply. Pick whichever one makes you feel better. I haven't resisted anything. I've been standing here with my hands on my own car. Voss tilted his head. See? That right there? That little attitude? That's resistance. Dalton grabbed Darius's wrist, twisted it behind his back. The second wrist followed. The handcuffs clicked shut with a sound that echoed down the quiet suburban street. Cold steel against warm skin. The surgical scrubs bunched at his wrists. The red and blue lights painted the oak trees in slow, repeating waves. Darius's phone buzzed one more time in his pocket. He couldn't answer it. Nobody knew it yet. Not the officers, not the neighbors, not the kid with the camera. But that phone call was about to change everything. Because on the other end of that line, inside the emergency room at St. Ellington Memorial, someone was dying. And the only person who could save her was now sitting in the back of a police cruiser, hands cuffed behind his back, watching the oak trees blur through a cage of metal and glass. Voss tapped the roof of the cruiser twice, the way you'd tap a horse. Let's go, Dalton. Drop him at the station. I'll finish with the vehicle. The cruiser pulled away. Darius didn't look back. He sat perfectly still, spine straight, eyes forward, breathing slow. The neighbors went back inside. The college kid stopped recording and posted the video with a single caption. They just arrested a doctor for nothing. Within an hour, that video would gain massive attention. Within a day, it would explode. But right now, in this moment, it was just a man in handcuffs and a street that had already forgotten him. The booking room at Willowbrook County Police Station smelled like burnt coffee and old paper. Fluorescent tubes hummed overhead, casting the kind of pale green light that makes everyone look sick. Darius stood in front of a counter while a processing officer took his belongings. One wallet, one phone, now showing multiple missed calls, one set of car keys, one hospital lanyard that Voss had tossed back into the cruiser like trash. The processing officer, a heavyset man, looked at the hospital ID, looked at Darius, looked at the ID again. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then closed it. Fingerprints next. Stand over there. Darius walked to the ink station, pressed each finger onto the pad one at a time. The black ink stained the ridges of the same hands that had stitched a teenager's lung back together earlier that day. Then came the mugshot. Face forward, no expression. The camera flashed. A man in surgical scrubs, inmate number across his chest, eyes steady, jaw set. The photograph looked like a contradiction, a healer framed like a criminal. Voss walked in just as they finished. He had a fresh cup of coffee in one hand and Darius's surgical instrument bag in the other. He dropped the bag on the counter like it was evidence from a crime scene. Log these. Suspicious tools found during a vehicle search. He looked at Darius. You want to update your little story now? Maybe tell me where you really got this stuff. Those instruments are registered to St. Ellington Memorial Hospital. My name is engraved on 3 of them. Voss picked up a scalpel, held it to the light, turned it slowly. Engraved? He smirked. Cute. You know what I think? I think you're a very creative thief. The scrubs, the fake ID, the little bag of toys. Almost had me. He set the scalpel down and leaned on the counter. Almost. Darius said nothing. His jaw tightened. A vein pulsed at his temple, but his hand stayed still at his sides. I'd like to make my phone call, Darius said. Phone call. Voss sipped his coffee. Yeah, that's gonna have to wait. I have a legal right. You have the rights I give you in my station. Sit down. Dalton led Darius to a holding cell at the end of a narrow hallway. The cell was small. A metal bench bolted to the wall, a stainless steel toilet in the corner with no privacy screen. The walls were scratched with old graffiti, names, desperate little carvings from people who had sat here before. The metal door slammed shut. The lock engaged with a deep, heavy click. Darius sat on the bench. The metal was cold through the thin fabric of his scrubs. He placed his hands on his knees, squeezed once, released, squeezed again. He stared at the wall across from him and breathed. Time passed. Then Voss appeared at the bars. He leaned against them casually, coffee still in hand, like a man visiting an exhibit at a zoo. "Are you comfortable there, doctor?" He said the word doctor the way you'd say clown, stretching it, mocking it. Darius didn't look up. "See, here's what I don't understand." Voss took a slow sip. "People like you come into towns like this and think what? That you belong? That we're just gonna roll out the red carpet?" Darius's eyes stayed on the wall. "I've kept this town clean for years. Not a single break-in, not a single robbery. You know why? Because I know who belongs here and who doesn't. I can smell it." He tapped the bars with his coffee cup. The metallic ring echoed down the hallway. "And you don't belong here. You never did. So, wherever you actually came from, I suggest you start thinking about going back." Darius looked up slowly. His eyes met Voss's. There was no anger in them, no fear, just something still, something patient. The kind of calm that comes from surviving this exact moment many times before. "Are you finished?" Darius asked. Voss grinned. "Oh, I'm just getting started." He pushed off the bars and walked away. His boots echoed down the hall until a door opened and closed somewhere out of sight. What Voss didn't see, what he was too arrogant to notice, was the small security camera mounted in the upper corner of the hallway. Its red light blinked softly in the dim light. It had recorded every word, every single one. Meanwhile, miles away, St. Ellington Memorial Hospital was in chaos. Darius's phone had been taken at booking. The ER had called it multiple times. No answer. The chief of surgery had vanished. Dr. Sophia Reyes, the attending ER physician, stood at the nurse's station with the phone pressed to her ear. Her other hand gripped the edge of the counter. "What do you mean he's in custody?" "For what?" The voice on the other end, the Willowbrook PD desk officer, was vague. "We have Darius Caldwell in holding. That's all I can tell you." Dr. Reyes hung up and immediately paged hospital administration. Within minutes, the call reached Mr. Clayton Whitaker III at his home across town. Whitaker was in his study, reading glasses on, a glass of scotch untouched on the desk. When his assistant relayed the message, he didn't raise his voice, didn't slam anything. He simply took off his glasses, set them on the desk, and said, "Get my car." But before Whitaker could leave his driveway, the ER doors at St. Ellington burst open. Paramedics rushed in a stretcher. A woman in her early 50s, face pale, lips turning blue, chest barely rising. The cardiac monitor screamed a jagged, erratic rhythm. Female collapsed at a restaurant. Acute aortic dissection. BP crashing. She's coding. Dr. Reyes ran beside the stretcher. She looked at the patient's face, then at the ID bracelet the paramedics had tagged. Patricia Voss. The name hit the room like a brick through glass. Dr. Reyes stabilized her. Epinephrine, chest compressions. They pulled her back once, then twice. The rhythm returned, weak, stuttering, but present. But stabilization was temporary. Patricia needed emergency surgery, a torn aortic valve, the kind of repair that requires a very specific surgeon, someone trained in emergency cardiothoracic reconstruction. There was only one surgeon in the region certified for this procedure. Dr. Reyes already knew. She looked at the nurse beside her. "Get Whitaker on the phone right now. Tell him it's not just about Darius anymore." She paused. "Tell him the chief of police's wife is going to die in this ER if we don't get our surgeon back." Patricia Voss had little time left, and the only man who could save her was sitting on a metal bench in a holding cell, staring at a wall, listening to the echo of a man who had just told him he didn't belong. "Nah, wait. Are you seeing this? This man's in a cell, still in his scrubs, locked up. Meanwhile, the guy who put him there, his wife's dying, and the only doctor who can actually save her? Yeah, it's the same man he just called a thief. Like, what? You really can't make this up." The black Mercedes pulled into the Willowbrook police station parking lot that evening. It didn't park in a visitor space. It parked directly in front of the main entrance, sideways, like a statement. Mr. Clayton Whitaker III stepped out, navy blazer over a white polo, silver hair combed back. No rush in his step, no panic on his face, just the quiet, terrifying calm of a man whose family name is carved into the front of a hospital. He walked through the front doors like he owned them. In a way, he owned half the county. The desk officer looked up, recognized him instantly, sat up straighter. "Mr. Whitaker, what can I get me, Chief Voss?" "Now." The desk officer picked up the phone. His hand was shaking slightly. Within minutes, Voss emerged from the back hallway. He was still holding his coffee, still wearing that same self-satisfied expression, but it flickered when he saw who was standing in his lobby. "Clayton." Voss extended his hand. "What brings you down here at this hour?" Whitaker didn't take the hand, didn't even look at it. "You're holding Dr. Darius Caldwell in your facility." Voss's smile thinned. "We've got a suspect by that name, yeah. Routine stop, suspicious behavior." Suspicious behavior. Whitaker repeated the words like he was tasting something rotten. What behavior specifically? He was driving a vehicle that didn't match his. Didn't match his what, Harlan? His skin color? The lobby went quiet. The desk officer stared at his keyboard. Dalton, who had been leaning against the doorframe in the back, straightened up. Voss's jaw tightened. "Now, hold on. We followed standard procedure." "Standard procedure." Whitaker took one step closer. His voice didn't rise. It dropped. Which was worse? "Let me tell you what your standard procedure has done this evening." He paused. Let the silence build. "While you've been down here playing cowboy with my chief of surgery, a man who has saved more lives in this county than you have protected, your wife was brought into my emergency room." Voss blinked. Patricia collapsed at a restaurant earlier. Acute aortic dissection. Her valve is torn. She's on life support right now. My ER team has stabilized her, but she needs emergency cardiothoracic surgery soon. Voss's coffee cup tilted in his hand. A thin stream of brown liquid spilled onto the tile floor. He didn't notice. And the only surgeon within a wide area who is certified to perform that operation, the only person who can keep your wife alive, is the man you have locked in a cage right now, in his scrubs, because he was driving home. The color drained from Voss's face, not slowly, all at once, like someone had pulled a plug. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. That can't, it is. Call your hospital if you don't believe me. Ask for the ER. Ask them who they've been trying to reach." Voss looked at Dalton. Dalton looked at the floor. Voss set his coffee cup on the desk, missed the edge. It fell to the floor and shattered. He didn't react. He was already moving down the hallway. His boots, the same boots that had crunched gravel around Darius earlier, now sounded different, faster, desperate. The echo of authority replaced by the echo of panic. He reached the holding cell. His hands fumbled with the keys. Metal scraped against metal. The lock clicked open. Darius was sitting exactly where Voss had left him, hands on his knees, spine straight, eyes forward. He hadn't moved an inch. Voss pulled the door open, stood there, breathing hard. His mouth is working, but producing nothing useful. Darius looked at him slowly, the same way he had looked at him through those bars earlier, except now, everything was different. Now, Voss needed him. Darius stood, straightened his scrubs, walked out of the cell, past Voss without a word, without a glance, the way you'd walk past a piece of furniture. Voss followed behind him like a shadow, smaller now, shrinking with every step. In the lobby, Whitaker was waiting. He handed Darius a set of car keys. "I'll drive. The OR team is prepping now." Darius nodded, took the keys, headed for the door. Behind them, Voss's voice cracked the silence, thin, broken. "Doctor?" Darius stopped. He didn't turn around. Is she going to... Darius stood still for a few seconds, the longest seconds of Harlan Voss's life. Then he said quietly, "I'll do everything I can." He walked out. The glass doors closed behind him. Whitaker opened the passenger door of the Mercedes. As Darius got in, Whitaker looked at him. "You don't owe him a thing. You know that." Darius stared straight ahead. The hospital was a short drive away. Patricia Voss had limited time left. "I'm not doing this for him." The engine started. The car pulled out of the lot. "I'm doing this because a woman is dying, and I'm a doctor. That's what I do." The Mercedes disappeared down Oakwood Road. The same road where earlier, a man in scrubs had been forced to his knees on cold asphalt. The same road, a completely different world. The Mercedes arrived at the hospital parking lot. Darius was out of the car before it fully stopped. He pushed through the ER entrance. The automatic doors weren't fast enough. He squeezed through the gap sideways, already moving at a half run. The surgical team was waiting. 2 nurses, an anesthesiologist, a perfusionist standing beside the heart-lung bypass machine. They had prepped Operating Room 1, the big one, the one reserved for cases where the margin between life and death is measured in heartbeats. Dr. Reyes met him in the hallway. She was walking fast, clipboard in hand, face tight. She's crashing again. We've got limited time before the dissection becomes irreversible. Darius didn't slow down. Blood type? Oh, positive. 6 units standing by. Imaging. CT angio on the screen in OR1. The tear is in the ascending aorta, root involvement. It's bad. Okay. Darius pushed open the scrub room door. Get her to bypass the second I walk in. He stood at the sink, turned on the water. Ahoy! The soap foamed over the same hands that had been pressed against the cold hood of a police cruiser earlier. The same fingers that had been rolled in black ink at a booking station. He scrubbed for the usual time the way he always does. No more, no less. Then he walked into OR1. Patricia Voss lay on the table. Her chest was already open. The anesthesiologist had her under. The monitors beeped in a rhythm that was too fast and too irregular. The bypass machine hummed beside her, ready to take over the job her heart could no longer do. Darius looked at the CT scan on the wall-mounted screen. The tear was severe. The aortic root was swollen to nearly twice its normal size. One wrong move, 1 millimeter off, and the entire vessel would rupture. He took a breath, pulled on his gloves, adjusted his headlamp. All right, let's go. For the next several hours, Darius Caldwell did what he was born to do. He worked in silence, precise, methodical. His hands moved the way a concert pianist's move. Muscle memory and instinct merged into something almost spiritual. He sutured, he grafted, he reinforced the torn aortic wall with a synthetic patch so delicate that a single tremor would destroy it. The room was silent except for the monitors and the soft hiss of suction. Nobody spoke unless Darius spoke first. The nurses anticipated his movements. Instruments appeared in his hand before he asked for them. Eventually, Darius placed the final suture, stepped back, watched the monitor. The heart rhythm steadied, strong, regular, alive. She's stable, he said. Let's close. He pulled off his gloves, dropped them in the bin, walked out of the operating room without ceremony. In the waiting room, Harlan Voss sat in a plastic chair, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. His uniform was wrinkled. His eyes were red. Officers Dalton and Brooks sat on either side of him. Nobody was talking. Darius appeared in the doorway, still in his scrubs, sweat stains visible at the collar. His face showed nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just exhaustion. Voss stood up. His legs were unsteady. Your wife is stable, Darius said. The surgery was successful. She'll need weeks of recovery, but she's going to live. Voss exhaled, a long, shuddering breath that seemed to empty his entire body. His eyes watered. His lips trembled. Doctor, I thank you. I don't know how to... Don't! The word stopped Voss mid-sentence. Darius's voice stayed level, quiet, but every syllable carried weight. Earlier, you put me on my knees on a public road. You called me a thief. You told me I don't belong here. You locked me in a cage and told me to go back where I came from. Voss's mouth hung open. No sound came out. You may want to call your attorney before you say anything else to me. Darius turned and walked down the hallway. His footsteps echoed against the polished floor. He didn't look back. Voss stood there, frozen, staring at the empty hallway like a man watching his entire life collapse in slow motion. Behind him, Officer Kayla Brooks stood up quietly. She excused herself, walked to the hospital administration desk. I need to speak with someone in charge, she said. I have body cam footage that needs to be preserved. She reached up and unclipped the small black camera from her chest. All of it. The first domino fell the next morning. The college kid's cell phone video, the one he posted with the caption, "They just arrested a doctor for nothing," had been live for a short time. It already had significant views. By sunrise, it grew rapidly. The video was grainy, shaky, shot from across the street, but it was clear enough. A black man in surgical scrubs, hands on the hood, 2 officers standing over him, red and blue lights flashing. And then, the handcuffs. Local news picked it up first. They ran it during their morning broadcast with the headline, "Local Surgeon Detained During Routine Traffic Stop. No Charges Filed." By midday, it wasn't local anymore. Attorney Vanessa Grant saw the video in the morning. She was eating breakfast in her kitchen when her phone buzzed with a link from a colleague. She watched it once, watched it again, set down her coffee, and called her office. "Cancel everything today. I'm taking a case." Soon after, Grant had filed a public records request for all body cam footage from the traffic stop on Oakwood Road. Later that day, she had it. Officer Kayla Brooks' body cam footage was lengthy, unedited, uninterrupted, and it was devastating. It captured everything the cell phone video missed: the close-up audio of Voss's voice, the sneer when he flicked Darius's hospital lanyard off his neck the moment he called surgical instruments burglary tools, the casual cruelty in his voice when he said, "I've been cleaning trash off these streets for years." But the body cam was only the second worst piece of evidence. The worst was the holding cell footage. The security camera in the hallway outside Darius's cell had recorded the scene of Chief Harlan Voss standing at the bars, delivering what could only be described as a monologue of pure contempt. Every word, every pause, every smirk. "People like you don't belong here. Go back to wherever you came from." All of it. In high definition with audio. Grant held a press conference that afternoon. She stood on the steps of the county courthouse. Microphones bristled in front of her like a steel garden. She played segments of the body cam footage, then segments of the holding cell footage. She didn't need to say much after that. Dr. Darius Caldwell is a chief of surgery who has saved hundreds of lives in this community. He was arrested without cause, searched without a warrant, and subjected to racial abuse by the chief of police. And then, while still in custody, he was released only because the chief's own wife needed his hands to survive. Let that sink in. The clip went national within the hour. Every network ran it. The headline wrote itself across every screen in America. Police chief arrests black surgeon, then begs him to save his wife. Social media didn't just pick it up. It detonated. The body cam clip gained millions of views quickly. The hashtag trended for days, even though Darius had already been released. It didn't matter. The hashtag wasn't about his freedom. It was about everything the arrest represented. Willowbrook County, a town most Americans had never heard of, was now the most talked about place in the country. And the political ground beneath Harlan Voss began to crack. The mayor had released a statement that morning supporting law enforcement and trusting in the department's internal review process. Later, after the press conference, after the footage, after calls for an investigation, the mayor released a second statement calling for an immediate independent investigation into the conduct of the Willowbrook Police Department. The county sheriff's office took over the investigation. Soon, the state attorney general opened a parallel civil rights inquiry. What they found buried the department. Multiple traffic stops involving black drivers. Not one resulted in charges. Every single stop was initiated by either Voss or Dalton. Probable cause documentation was missing in the cases. Internal emails surfaced during the investigation. Voss had sent a message to his officers with the subject line, "Neighborhood Awareness." The body of the email instructed patrol units to maintain heightened vigilance regarding new residents who do not fit the established community profile. The prosecutors didn't need a translator for that. The federal grand jury indicted Harlan Voss on 3 counts: false imprisonment, violation of civil rights under federal statute, and abuse of authority. The trial lasted a few days. The jury deliberated briefly. Guilty. All counts. Voss was sentenced to time in federal prison, banned from law enforcement for life. His pension was revoked. He stood in the courtroom when the verdict was read. His face was gray. His hands trembled at his sides. He looked like a man who had aged significantly in a short time. Officer Bryce Dalton was terminated and charged as an accomplice. He received a suspended sentence with mandatory retraining. Grant publicly called the sentence too lenient for what it deserved. Most people agreed, but the legal reckoning didn't stop there. Grant filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against Willowbrook County on Darius's behalf. The county fought it briefly before their attorneys advised settlement. The number was millions. Darius accepted the settlement, then held his own press conference. It was short. He stood behind a podium in a navy suit. No notes, no anger, just clarity. "I'm donating the full amount to establish the Caldwell Justice Initiative, a legal defense fund for victims of racial profiling who can't afford an attorney. Because what happens to me happens every day, to people who don't have a hospital board chairman to come get them out." He stepped away from the podium, didn't take questions. Officer Kayla Brooks, the quiet one, the one who stood by her cruiser and watched, the one who handed over her body cam and filed the first complaint. She was promoted. Months later, she transferred to the State Police Academy. She now teaches a mandatory course to every incoming cadet. The course is called Protect and Serve, and what those words actually mean. A year later, Willowbrook County looked different. Not the lawns, not the oak trees. Not the freshly painted fences or the neighborhood watch signs. Those were all still there. What changed was underneath. The Willowbrook Police Department had a new chief, the first one hired from outside the county in its entire history. A civilian oversight board now reviewed every use of force report, every traffic stop, every complaint. The board met monthly in the community center on Oakwood Road, the same road where Darius Caldwell had been forced to his knees. The meetings were open to the public. People actually showed up. Darius Caldwell still drives that same dark blue Chevy Tahoe, still plays classical music on the way home, still keeps his hospital lanyard hanging from the rearview mirror. He never replaced the one Voss flicked off his neck that night. He got a new one. It hangs in the same spot. He still drives the speed limit on Oakwood Road. Some habits don't change. Some habits shouldn't have to exist. But other things did change. Darius now sits on the county's Civilian Oversight Board. He was asked. He accepted, not because he wanted to relive what happened, because he wanted to make sure it didn't happen to someone else. He also speaks at medical schools across the South, not about surgery, about the intersection of race and service, about what it means to take an oath to save every life, even the life connected to the man who tried to break yours. His daughter asked him once over dinner, "Dad, do you regret moving to Willowbrook?" He thought about it for a long time, longer than she expected. "No," he said, "because if I leave, they win. And I didn't survive what I survived just to let somebody else decide where I belong." Patricia Voss made a full recovery. Weeks of rehabilitation, months of cardiac therapy. She sent Darius a handwritten letter, 3 pages. The contents have never been made public. Darius has never spoken about it. Neither has she. They have never been in the same room since the night of the surgery. Harlan Voss served his sentence at a federal facility in another state. Upon release, he moved. Nobody in Willowbrook knows where. Nobody in Willowbrook asks. His name has become the kind of name people use as a cautionary tale, spoken in training rooms and courtrooms, never in admiration. Officer Bryce Dalton completed his sentence and left law enforcement entirely. Last anyone heard, he was working at a supply warehouse 2 states away. He has made no public statements. Officer Kayla Brooks, now a lieutenant, stands in front of a classroom of new cadets every week. She starts each session the same way. She plays the first part of her own body cam footage from that night. The room always goes silent. Then she asks one question. "What would you have done?" Most cadets don't answer right away. That silence, she says, is the whole point. Mr. Clayton Whitaker III pushed the hospital board to establish a permanent diversity and equity initiative. It carries Darius's name. The Caldwell Fellowship funds underrepresented medical students every year. Full ride, no exceptions. The Caldwell Justice Initiative, funded by the settlement, has taken on multiple cases in its first year. Many resulted in settlements or policy changes. Others are still pending. Darius doesn't run it. He didn't want to. He wanted it to be bigger than him. He wanted it to outlast him. It will. Look, yeah, the story made up, but that feeling, though, when someone looks at you and already decided you're nothing before you even say a word, yeah, that's real. That's like a normal day for a lot of people. And I'm not gonna lie, every time I think about that, yeah, that one messes with me. So let me ask you something. And I mean this for real. If you were Darius, if you were the one in that cell, in your scrubs, hands still smelling like ink from a booking station, would you have walked into that operating room and saved her life? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know. And if this story hit you, if it made you feel something, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Turn on notifications, because we've got more stories like this coming. Justice doesn't always come fast, but when good people refuse to break, it comes. See you in the next one.